All right, welcome to another edition of Fansview Fridays. This is the weekly live stream where we talk about anime conventions as told through the eyes and the lens of Kevin Lillard. Kevin Lillard was a pioneer of taking cosplay photos, reporting on conventions, and talking about them on his website, fansview.com. If you were in the convention scene in the early 2000s, late 90s, this was like your go to resource for anime convention photos and much more. Kevin provided the community a service which was very valuable because he would go to conventions, as he was at the convention, he would upload photos, upload any announcements at panels, and this was considered revolutionary in an era where we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have Instagram, and all that stuff we're familiar with today. Unfortunately, fansview.com is taken off online. However, webarchive.org has preserved a majority of his reports and his photos. So, Fansview Fridays, our goal is to really just recapture the magic that Kevin brought to us every week, one report at a time. So, for this week, we will be covering Project A-kon, which took place in Grapevine, Texas on June 2 through 4 in the year 2000. All right, we're going to take a look at A-kon 2000. And I apologize if my voice sounds a little bit hoarse right now. I'm currently recovering from transitioning from new meds to from my old meds, so you'll have to forgive my voice if it sounds a lot raspier than usual. Artist Takata Akemi and actor Amanda Wynn Lee were guests of honor in the heart of Texas. All right, let's start with Friday. And I'm just curious if I might see some familiar faces here. I did have a couple of friends who went to A-kon, so let's see if they're here. A convention means costumers, and here are the first at Project A-kon. Okay, scrolling through. I think that's Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. We have Goku and some Hammer Space. Idea from Final Fantasy VIII. Again, 8 was such a popular series during this era of conventions. And also during this era of conventions, Kevin was taking more and more cosplay photos. So it'll be nice to just kind of have a voice break as we're looking through some cosplay photos here. And again, if you recognize the costume, the series they're from, or maybe it's a friend of yours, shout them out in the chat, shout them out in the comments. Let them know that their memories are being preserved right here. Yeah, Lum was also a very popular cosplay back in the day if you weren't afraid to show some skin. Also, during this time period, you had a lot of folks cosplaying from Sorcerer Hunters. This is also the time period where we're also seeing a lot of femmes cosplay as the Gundam Wing pilots. So it looks like we got Duo over there. It looks like it's Duo, or it could be Kochi from that one mecha OVA I like. Gunbuster, Aim for the Top. And Ramses has spotted a realm from Final Fantasy VI. And of course, this is the era where we saw a lot of Fushigi Yugi. You'll see a lot of people cosplaying from shoujo anime, the popular shoujo anime of the time. And I think that's totally wonderful. Because one of the things I liked about this era, hey, look, there's Char Aznable, is we didn't really care much for cosplaying from like the most popular thing. And granted, yeah, Utena, Final Fantasy VIII were popular shows at the time, shows and video games at the time. But it wasn't too like, hey, let's just cosplay from what's popular because this is going to bring in the most attention, it's going to bring in the most likes, most followers, and so forth. But you cosplayed even though if something was like 5 years old, 10 years old, or even something from the 70s like Gundam, you still cosplay from it. And yeah, this background, oh my god, people are gonna, it's killing my eyes right now. I'm literally like trying to squint like every couple seconds because Kevin, love him a lot. During this era, he had some very interesting choices for backgrounds. And this is just kind of example of like what we considered a not to do when you're considering website design. You want to stay away from this color scheme here, especially that dreaded lime green. I remember like just hearing from folks like, yeah, if you're gonna do web design, if you're gonna build a website back then, yeah, don't use that piercing lime green that's gonna like do things to your eyes at 1 a.m. Looks like we're running out of photos here. We're just gonna, okay, looks like I got Lee Shaoran and Mei Lin. Again, we'll start seeing a lot of Cardcaptor Sakura cosplayers. Cardcaptor Sakura during this time period was starting to air on WB, but also people had access to the fan subs. And I was just a huge fan of Cardcaptor Sakura my first year of high school into my sophomore year. It was just like my comfort, feel-good anime. Here are the other early arrivals in Texas on Friday. All right, who are our early arrivals? I know some of these faces. Doc Fraga with his new daughter, Arthur Giles Portress and Carl Horn. Lloyd Carter of Anime Weekend Atlanta. Steve Bennett of Studio Iron Cat. Keith Burgess of Manga Entertainment. I actually had a pina colada with that guy. Jerry Chu of Bandai Entertainment. Animator Sean the Touched. DJ Sachiko Uchida and Friends. Artist Fred Perry. Matt Greenfield of ADV Films. Dave Amy Howard and Shin Kurokawa. Brett Weaver and Jessica Calvello. Artist Bryden Stelfreeze. British writer Helen McCarthy. I know her. She is one of my mentors and one of the people who encouraged me to write my book, The Fangirl Diaries. Love you, Helen. I will definitely put your portrait here in our thumbnail for this edition of Fansview Fridays. Actor Tiffany Grant on a vintage cell phone. Check that out. Actors Rachel Lillis and Amanda Winley. Artist Takada Kemi. Dragon Ball actors Damian Clark and Linda Chambers Young. Also in the chat, we got Ramses telling us, well, also to consider, we also had CRTs that had a max of 80 by 600, and the background would have been a lot obscured by the pictures. Hey, our Steve Bennett sighting. I'm pretty sure we'll see more of Steve Bennett here. Tiffany Grant rocking the Zach Morris. You're not wrong. It's like, take a look at this piece of vintage here. We got like the cell phones that were like pretty huge, and you had to raise the antenna to get signal. I remember just having phones with antennas so large you could like use them as lightsabers. Her camera caught another group of Friday costumers. All right, what costumers will we find here? Okay, looks like that's a very stylized emerald and black lady from Sailor Moon. We have Magic Knight Rayearth over there. I want to say his name is Fiero, but I'm like, I know it starts with an F, but I'm like, Fiero, that's wicked. Okay, there's Lupin the Third and Jigen. Yeah, Lupin cosplays were just like one of the easy like go-to costumes back then, because all you have to do is just go to like Goodwill, just find the jacket of your preferred Lupin. You got pink, you got red, you got green. Just find that jacket, find that tie, and you are set. I also love that this is also the era where we're seeing a lot of Utena cosplay. If I could just like go back to this era and just like dress up from all my favorite magical girl shows. Oh, looks like we got someone from Final Fantasy VI. We have Celeste in the opera dress. We have Gally from Battle Angel. I do love Battle Angel. The movie that came out, the live action adaptation of Battle Angel, does such great justice to the original source material. I'm glad I was finally able to watch the live action Battle Angel, and hopefully we will have a sequel sooner rather than later. Yeah, I'm also loving all the Final Fantasy VI. I love seeing this represented. All right, let's take a look at opening ceremonies. The 1998 stage was used for a third year in a row. Redressed this time to resemble a used mecha lot. I use Mick a lot. Let's see where this goes. Con chair Mary Hazelwood said 1,400 people had registered in advance for the convention and 600 bought tickets on Friday. Last year, the guests were introduced, but this year their names were projected on the big screen for all to see. Brought on stage for flowers was artist Takata Kemi, who said she was impressed by the collection of costumers. Then came the annual embarrassment of Iron Cat Steve Bennett on his birthday. It started with an incriminating t-shirt. And if you're curious, the incriminating text on the t-shirt is, "I slept with Steve Bennett." We need to get you that shirt, Rams. And a member of the A-kon security crew, Ogre, who just happened to have an identical shirt, which says, "I slept with Steve Bennett." Then Bennett got another birthday licking on stage, which took a while since he's over 30 years old. Okay, looks like it's the maid with a cleaning feather duster thing. Okay. A troupe of taiko drummers made an energetic return to the convention to close the opening ceremonies. And all I can say is I know what we're doing for Ramses' birthday, in addition to what we had already had planned. Funimation presented fresh faces from Fort Worth. The fresh voice acting faces at Project A-kon were all of the local heroes. Were the local heroes. Funimation, the company with the U.S. rights to the Dragon Ball Z series, spent the weekend selling merchandise and bringing the series' voice actors to the convention. Funimation is headquartered in Fort Worth, a short distance by Texas standards from the convention. The Friday Funimation actors at A-kon were Damian Clark, the voice of Cell, and Linda Chambers, the voice of Frieza. We should make a couple of notes. These actors and the others are the newer voices for the Dragon Ball cast in English, since Funimation moved dubbing production of the series from Canada to Texas and replaced all the actors. Also, we're dispelling names of the tough guy character Frieza instead of Frieza or Freezer because of the spelling we found on the product boxes of Funimation booth. Apparently, no one can agree on the way the character's name should be transliterated into English. Just as with the male characters like Bart Simpson and Charlie Brown, Frieza's actor is a woman. Chambers Young has a gravelly voice. I have a gravelly voice right now, just like the Canadian actor who had handled the Dragon Ball episodes in English. But we understand that Frieza was a man. When asked whether characterization or timing or making those odd fighting noises was the hardest part of dubbing the role, Chambers Young said, "It's a combination of doing it all at once. The fight noises were hard for me to learn, but I'm good at that now." Fans visiting the Funimation booth for autographs on Friday were intrigued to learn that Frieza's newest voice was actually a woman, and some question whether the character was male or female. "No one knows what Frieza is," Chambers Young answered. "Others want to learn if Frieza was going to stay dead. I'm going to come back again," she replied. "Frieza's stubborn." Okay, in the chat, Ram says, when you play the English version of Ultimate Battle 22 for the PS1, you see everyone with Goku TM. All right, let's get to know one of my mentors here, Helen McCarthy, my bad. Helen McCarthy loved anime so much that she written books and was founded magazines on the subject. This fan, author, and writer from Great Britain has been compelled to spread the anime gospel through her writings. "It's not just a big business opportunity, it's something that brings people together," McCarthy said at a Project A-kon panel on Friday. McCarthy has been involved with 2 anime magazines in Great Britain. She helped found and was the editor of the well-regarded Anime UK and Anime FX titles, which folded a few years ago. "Stopping Anime FX was like bearing a child," she said. After this project shut down, McCarthy helped convince the owner of Titan Publishing in Great Britain to launch a successor, Manga Mania, which turned into the current Manga Max. McCarthy said that half of Manga Max's 30,000 monthly circulation in the US. And she added the magazine sales in Great Britain are larger than the number of anime tapes sold in the nation. "We're trying to reach an intelligent audience who wants to talk about anime," McCarthy said, adding that Manga Max faces some challenges in the coming months to appeal to American readers. McCarthy joked that she wanted to cover her book on erotic anime to have sex in big letters on the cover, but the publisher settled on the Erotic Anime Movie Guide, co-written by Jonathan Clemens, the current editor of Manga Max. The book was a response to those on both sides of the Atlantic who don't like anything to do with sex. You have, even more than we do, pockets of people who feel that anything created after 1900 shouldn't be distributed, said McCarthy. While a lot of bad erotic anime sells, well, McCarthy despises the film with the English language titled Gigolo. The book also sells well and is being used by film schools as a reference guide. All right, Rams and Chet, referencing back to the Dragon Ball panel, well, ahead of the curve of the Frieza resurrection, and welcome Professor Listeria. Great to have you here. All right, but wait, there's more. The defining work of McCarthy's career is her book on filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki's, published in the U.S. by Stonebridge Press. Writing this was an absolute dream of mine, she said. McCarthy was worried that Miyazaki might be inaccessible, but was delighted to find that his production company was more than willing to set up an interview. That led to a memorable trip to Japan for a 4-hour interview with the master filmmaker. He was a very well-read, a very opinionated, McCarthy said. He's at the stage where everything is marvelous to him. He has the enormous emotions and passions, one of the few Japanese who isn't afraid to say no. Takada Akemi created the anime look of some popular characters. Alright, let's find out who they are. Takada Akemi is modest about her accomplishments. At Project A-kon, she said she was surprised by the number of people who wanted to get her autograph. She described herself as a would-be manga artist who couldn't think of any stories. She turned to illustration instead. Her fans know better following her illustration career and buying her books. Others know Takada from her character designs from anime, especially those series where she has taken the original manga design and adapted for film, series such as Kimagure Orange Road, Urusei Yatsura, and Maison Naikoku. When she translates a manga design into a character for animation, I spend time making it easy for others to draw that character. I spend a lot of time looking for patterns of facial expression. Getting the proportions on anime characters is the main point, she said. The head has to be the right size when compared to the rest of the body, by anime standards where heads are larger and legs longer than on real people. There's also a matter of making sure that the height of the character stays the same in comparison to others in a series. Takada told how she moved into the anime industry. She wanted to be an artist, but her parents didn't think she would succeed. So they sent her to a design school. However, she didn't fail, and she graduated from that art college. While in school, she became a fan of the Gatchaman anime series and wanted to meet its producers. So she had her sister bake a cake. She put on a dress. The pants preferring Takada, said she doesn't wear skirts very often, and took it to the producers. They were very kind to me. They showed me around and gave me cells to take home. Later, Takada got her first anime job with Tatsunoko Productions, worked there for several years, and then struck out on her own, being called upon to work with Rumiko Takahashi series when the manga was animated. Of all her character designs, does she have a favorite? Not really, she said. When I'm working on a new character, I get into that character. All right. Amanda Wen Lee and others talk about Dragon Half and the U.S. anime industry. The author is far too much of a fan of the Dragon Half anime for his own good. So when a chance comes to the people about the production of the dub version of Mink's Adventures from ADV Films, he asked. Amanda Wen Lee said she really wanted to get the role of Mink, but that went to Jessica Calvello. So Lee got the part of Princess Vina, Mink's slime half rival. She was such a brat. She was so hilarious, Lee said. Creating the character's voice said Lee to fall back on another role from Burn Up W, the policewoman who made the infamous naked bungee jump from a helicopter. Lee said she took that performance before the bungee jump, not during, and revised that for Princess Vina. Tiffany Grant, who portrayed just about every female type that exists in her ADV roles, broke ground in Dragon Half as Doug Finn, her first male furry role. The voice of a boy who battles Mink in the series' climactic scene doesn't sound anything like Grant's other roles, and she paid a price for that effort. In the picture, Grant is pointing to a muscle in her throat, just under her chin. She strained that muscle during the Dragon Half dubbing sessions. I wouldn't advise doing it. It's very damaging, she said. The Dragon Half Dub is part of ADV's move to bring anime into the commercial mainstream in North America, according to co-founder Matt Greenfield. They're available in just about every video store in America. I'd call that mainstream, he said. Dragon Half's popularity comes from its humor and cute characters, something that draws new fans to anime. The majority of people who follow anime are into the style. There are those who say it's their own private thing, but the big thing is the stories, he said. All right, we are done with Friday. Let's move on to Saturday. Before that, let's take a drink of lemonade right here. Here's the first convention costume collection from Saturday. All right, we got a crew of Sailor Senshi. Let me just scroll down here. Yeah, someone in a kimono. Someone in Y2K style, really digging the leopard print. Okay, we have Jessie and Akane. And for those of you who follow the Japanese version of Team Rocket, that would be Musashi. Oh, I do love me that Kaoru. I love the wings. We have a Pikachu. We have Saturn, another Pikachu. We have Merle. I'm not quite sure who that is. Okay, we'll just keep scrolling through Saturday photos. Again, a lot of love for Final Fantasy VIII. We have Quistis, and we also have Irvine. Okay, we have Totoro. Scrolling down. Chun-Li. Alright. What's on the next page? We have Oh My Goddess, got Belldandy over there. Looks like we have a rogue Klingon at an anime convention. Okay, so Ramsey said that there was someone in some of the previous photos who was from Suikoden. Aren't they making an anime of that this year? Because I think I've heard like an JRPG that I was familiar with back in high school is turning into an anime this year. We have classic Joker and Batman. And Ramses also mentions that A Girl in Yellow is from Fatal Fury. We have Adea from 8. We have Setsuna. Oh, there's a lot of love for Battle Angel. I love it. Eternal Sailor Moon, Lena Inverse. I really like that that candid shot of Lena over there. Chichiri. Let's not talk about that. We do have an Anthe over there. We have some furries. Oh, we also have Celeste. Again, really liking a lot of love for Final Fantasy VI over here. Got Miyu and Larva just hanging out by the water cooler. I love that I can say, like, yeah, Miyu and Larva are just hanging out by the water cooler. All right, let's talk about fanfic in the year 2000. It is the year 2000. Fanfiction writers shared secrets on Saturday. They couldn't sit back and keep watching their anime for all time, but they have stories that demand to be told. Fanfiction writers enjoy their favorite characters so much they want to go beyond the tales on tapes and disc. 6 of those writers, Kevin Hamill, Douglas Reeves, Nick Leifer, Andrew Norris, and Richard Lawson, and James Bateman, held a panel on fanfiction at Project A-kon. There was a lot of talk about how to print fanfiction before the discussion turned into storytelling. Reeves is one of those writers who says that stories take a life of their own no matter what he wants at first. I never had a story go the way it was outlined, Reeves said. The characters do what they want to do, and Reeves swears that one of his plots came to him in the form of a dream, a strange dream. Real life is a lot stranger than fiction, Leifker said. In fiction, you have to make sense. Real life doesn't make sense. Norris noted that fanfiction isn't going to be a retail project because it makes use of copyrighted characters. The only edge writers have is that copyright violations have to be reported by the copyright holder, not the government. The odds of us being prosecuted are low, Norris said. Lawson said that fanfic writers don't have to worry about legal harassment because their stories are free from promotion for the original material. He noted that the rise of internet means more fanfiction on newsgroups and web pages. The audience and the participants have gone to such an extent that there's a lot more to choose from, good and bad, he said. The authors also were asked if stories had to adhere to canon of stories by series original writers. If you have a story, write a story. Who cares about canon? Answered Lawson. Cineknife's intensive artwork is a team effort. Cineknife's manga have recently gotten attention in the United States through the publication of titles like Valkyr and Sepia from Studio Ironcat, but the material is said to be far from the most intense artwork and storytelling he has produced. Knife's horror manga has a large fan following in Japan, much of it female, he says, and much of the credit must go to his wife Nikoi, also an artist and a rock musician. Knife first thinks up of his stories, then he tells the ideas to his wife to find what she thinks. Instead of talking to an editor, it's better to talk to her first. She comes up with a lot of ideas. It's a team thing, she added. Nekoi's influence is one of the ways Knife keeps his repeating stories without realizing what he's doing. Knife also tries to remember old plots so he doesn't have to recycle them into new stories. While sex and horror are Knife's real artistic specialties, he doesn't mix those genres in his titles. Readers of the adult manga don't like to see someone killed, Knife said. Brian Stillfreeze treated fans to washes of color. Alright, let's take a look here. Is a hairdryer the secret to Brian Stillfreeze's cover art? The noted artist made heavy use of a dryer when he demonstrated his painting style for a group of Project A-kon fans, but there's a lot more to the dryer to Stillfreeze's work. The dryer just helps prepare the painting surface for the next layer of color. The use of color and the way people and printers perceive color are keys to what Stillfreeze does. Even with the watercolors that Stillfreeze used in his demonstration, it's possible to give a picture some texture which turns it from illustration to art. It's the difference between having something that looks like it was made by a machine and something that looks like a painter did it, he said. One trick, an overwash of light gray paint was applied to the surface before the rest of the color was added. The color serves to draw attention to the figure's face and hair, the heart of the composition. The background, green and blue here, will fade in the viewer's eye when the woman's drawn in. You can see only one bright color at a time. That's how you do a painting. You're capturing a single instance, said Stillfreeze. I like to do paintings that are shades of gray, and then bam, the color is right there. All the colors call to attention to the figure on the foreground. The details in the Stillfreeze painting also call to attention to the heart of the artwork. I don't try to do the details all over the place, he said. I'll put the details where people will see them. Some of the industry guys were on hand for product talk. Are you still patiently waiting for the release of the original Super Dimensional Fortress Macross series from Anime Ego? You'll have to wait a little longer. Shin Kurokawa said at Project A-kon he spent part of April and most of May in Hollywood remastering the 1980s TV series. That new digital master is almost finished, but it took a long time to complete because there was a lot of flaws in the original film. For instance, there are registration errors where the art appears to jump up and down in frame, and there are color exposure errors and other film-related problems. Fixing Macross's flaws has taken far longer than anyone expected. Kurokawa said, adding, while we've digitally restored a lot of footage, don't expect the final result to be totally flawless. Certain flaws give older shows a lot of character missing from new ones, referring to things like paint matching errors. Roy Focker's uniform changes color from scene to scene, for example. Another group of patient fans Another group of patient fans hasn't waited for the resumption of the Neon Genesis Evangelion manga from Viz. Excuse me, one moment. Okay, thank you so much for holding. All right, another group of patient fans has been waiting for the resumption of the Neon Genesis Evangelion manga from Viz, which is halted because there was a pause from the original series. Carl Horn, Viz's manga editor, said that the Eva manga will resume on October, with more original scenes had not been seen in the film version. It's not going to be a replay of the anime, Horn said. There's more ahead of Eagle, the series on a Japanese American presidential candidate, which will be released to coincide with the U.S. presidential campaign. Viz's mature manga anthology, Pulp, will see a story about a portrait painter by day, hot man by night. This has a Philip Marlowe feel to it. The Shortcuts title will look at the Kogal phenomenon in Japan, with schoolgirls turn prostitutes to make money for expensive clothes. Even more erotic and strange titles will come from the new Secret Comics Japan anthology, culled from the famed Garo semi-underground manga. John Cirabella of Media Blasters said he agrees with those who think that sales of subtitled VHS tapes will fade as sub buyers gravitate to DVDs, which can hold both subtitled and the dub versions of anime. Media Blasters plans to transfer its catalog to DVD as long as those titles have decent sales. Don't expect marriage on DVD, he said. Mahosuke Tai is going to Mahosuke Tai is going to be one of those few TV series that Media Blasters will carry, since it's too hard to keep a long series on store shelves. And no, there will be no uncut, unedited Kite from Media Blasters. You still can't ignore the Pokemon people. When Rachel Lillis finished recording the lines for Jessie for the Pokemon series for the first time, she left the studio and said goodbye to the crew, figuring that this was the only time she'd see that group for the one-shot role. But they said, "You're coming back next week," and Lillis knew she might have something going. All of that was a part of her initiation to success of the Pokemon TV series, now into its second year and still going strong. When Lilith spoke to fans at Project A-kon, they mostly were interested in Misty and Jessie from Pokemon. As they are at most conventions, her Uten and Tenjo work seems to be lost by comparison. Lilith told about how fascinating it was to see children playing Pokemon cards and acting out the shows. There was the word that the 6:30 a.m. showing of Pokemon on New York TV, the only time a station would run the program at first, got higher ratings than today on NBC. So how does Lilith think of all those characters? Thank Aunt Marge, a relative whose eccentric speech was borrowed by Lilith for one of the Pokemon characters she voiced. I got a phone call from her and she said, "What have I been telling you my whole life? Don't imitate me," Lilith recalled. In the chat we have Ramsey saying, and they did eventually release Kite Uncut, not by them. I did see an uncut version of Kite. It was not the most legal thing in the world. I will leave it at that. All right, let's take a look at some Masquerade cosplayers from the backstage. Looks like we got Final Fantasy VIII. I believe this is a Suikoden cosplayer that you had referenced, Rams. Kind of scrolling through here. Again, if you recognize any of these, just shout them out. Oh, it's Chrono from Chrono Trigger. Okay, my apologies. Okay, just kind of going through. Got a white mage over there. A lot of video game representation at this convention. We have Lupin the Third. Oh, yeah, Tyler. You don't really see a lot of Tyler cosplayers anymore. It's one of my favorite sci-fi series. People ask me, like, yeah, do you watch Star Trek Lower Decks? Like, no, I have Captain Tyler. I have Martian successor Nadeshiko. I got all that at home, babe. Okay, we have Jigen. See, just scrolling through. Looks like we got people from the Vision of Escaflowne movie. Okay, we got Goku, got Saturn, got Deedlit from Lotus Wars. Eventually, I will need to finally just sit down and just rewatch Lotus Wars. Okay, the guy in red was Ryo from Ronin Warriors. I had a friend who was all about Ronin Warriors. We have an infant of sorts. Oh, we have Trixie. And we have Speed, and just came back from McDonald's. Oh, we have a kitty. It's a Tama. I think this is a Tama that's just kind of been just going around to conventions. And here are pictures from the onstage masquerade show. All right, I'd like to see all this come together. Oh wait, that's the fan fiction writers panel. Okay, we have an infant of sorts. And it looks like we have Tekken already here. That's pretty awesome. We have a tiny human as Sakura. Amelia. I assume that is a slime of sorts. A wild Joker has appeared. We got Deedlit. Oh, we got Speed Racer. That's awesome. Mew and Larva. That's iconic. I love it. Goku. Guy with hammer. Got Saturn. You got Goku just getting his butt handed to my hammer. Okay, we got Duo. Kind of going through here. I'm also just taking some time to also admire like the backdrop on stage, because there's like, if you look closely, there's some text that says "with love, Amy Howard," who was like a voice actress like back in the day. Saiyan Girl Lettuce. Oh, it's a Pikachu with a RC car. I love that. Looks like we got some cat girls over here. We have Miyaka from Shugiyuki, Hotohori, Tiz looks like, and we have Moose, Sephiroth. Not what I wanted. Let's kind of do that again. Aw, we're missing photos. That makes me sad. We have Kenshin Kaoru. I love it. Seijiro from Kenshin. Just looking at some of the text in the background. Welcome to Zeppos. Some guy wearing a Shaft shirt. Lupin and Jigen. Okay, let's do that again. All right, looks like we don't have page 13. All right, we'll have to kind of like just stop going through photos here. And we'll take a look at the Masquerade Award winners. Okay, Best in Show went to the Final Fantasy VIII group. Looks like we have some Final Fantasy folks here. I love that expression on the Irvine. Second place. Oh, so it was a combination skit of looks like 8 and part 6. Second place went to Speed Racer. And we have a whole Kenshin crew here for third place. We have a fursuit for technical achievement. Oh, okay, so you're saying Ram says it's a mix of Kenshin and Samurai Deeper Kyo. Got it. Non-anime act went to the Joker here. Presentation went to Racer X. Humor, can't quite tell what that is, but I do know that Steve Bennett in cargo shorts. And Winkler's Award. And that looks cool. Cinema Knife's Award went to Totoro. Dojinshi Artist Award went to Sakura. It looks like that Sakura also involved like a, let's see, the Pikachu on the RC, the car over here, and the Tama. Steve Bennett's Award went to Parappa and Captain Harlock. To which Ramses, who is also known as Steve Bennett's non-union Mexican equivalent, says, 2000s cargo shorts for the win. I miss my 2000s cargo shorts. Oh, okay, it's Queen Emerald's. Okay, Children's Awards. Aww. Hall Costuming Awards. Let's just look through here. Oh, I love that there's a Zoe site. That's awesome. All right, let's take a look at Sunday. The weekend's last costumers were on hand on Sunday. Okay, let's just kind of scroll through here. Oh, then we got some Marmalade Boy cosplayers. That was a show that was pretty popular back then. But you didn't really see a lot of Marmalade Boy cosplayers. I remember like getting into Marmalade Boy like when I was like a teen. It was like my WB series, but that series just went down like this weird rabbit hole. Like I liked the first 30 episodes, but I'm like, y'all, I can do without this. Okay, just scrolling through here. We have Anthe. Oh, we have some from Slayers. All right, what else was going on Sunday? Along with people who make many of those costumes. All right, looks like we're going to go into a cosplay panel. No, it's not a trophy case of big game anime hunter who specialize in anime characters, or maybe it really is. These heads weren't shot. They were sculpted out of foam and covered in fur. They're heads of some of the most impressive costumes seen at anime conventions in recent years. The 6-foot larger-than-life creations that stop fans in their tracks. Nikki Froberg made the heads and the rest of those costumes and appeared at a costuming panel at A-kon on Sunday. Yes, it is hot in those foam-filled creations, but it's worth the effort to draw that attention, she said. None of my characters speak, so no one expects them to talk, she said when describing the reaction of people who see and hear her in the halls. Moving in those suits is not easy because it's hard to see outside, and the costumer has to be careful not to bump into something valuable and break it. Ruby Boyko creates some of the best anime hair out of foam, and she revealed her secrets. Go to a craft shop and get a $10 block of foam, then slice it into strips. Then find a woven hat of the kind that old women wear. Strip away the plastic flowers and attach the foam strips to the hat. Shape and dye the foam, and when you have the hair for washing from Tenchi Muyo that Boyko wore in 1999 at Anime Week Atlanta. Boyko recommends the foam anime hair to cardboard paper because no one gets hurt if they bump into the hair. She also suggests that costumes should be made out of cloth instead of paper because cloth can stretch where paper tears apart. Don't laugh, paper costumes have been tried before. Heather McCullum has gotten a lot of attention and some awards that her large Tama-chan cat costume, and more attention with the lumbikini that she wore at A-kon. Tama-chan is made of fur-colored foam. size to the wearer, sewn and hot glued together. For Lump, McCollum had no intention of dyeing her hair green for this costume, but that helped hide the brown string, the same color as her hair, that held the horns in place. The horns were made in the ceramics class. The pointed ears, not usually seen in a Lump costume, were found as alien ears at a store. The tiger stripes on the bikini were pastel dyed, and the boots not seen here were overlays of fur wrapped around shoes. Okay, and we also have Rob in the chat. The side pockets are good. Hi, well, you're more than welcome to peek in and hang out in the chat. It's always wonderful having more people at my virtual cottage. One author looked at anime and Japanese culture. Not often at an anime convention do you find someone translating Japanese from a magazine on the fly. Dr. Susan Naper teaches Japanese culture and literature course at the University of Texas and travels to Project A-kon to provide an academic view of anime. The magazine she was reading was published by Studio Ghibli and was reporting on the American reaction to the animated films of Hayao Miyazaki, which led to some comments on Miyazaki films from Naper. I think he's comfortable with his science fiction and fantasy world. It's an international world that transcends any time or place. He puts this together and makes it real. He has a message. It's about being human and not about being Japanese. The Naper look at the animated film output of the Walt Disney Company over the last few years. They are all enjoyable films, but they have a Disney slanted agenda. They're about American heroes. By comparison, anime remains a mostly Japanese art form and will continue to be primarily for Japanese audience. Japan is where they make their money, but they're influenced by the West, she said. Yeah, I agree, Rams. It's interesting to see seeing people say this in the 2000s. All right. And other authors told why they're compelled to write their books. Looks like we got Giles, we got Helen. Oh, my two mentors in one panel. I love this. They all have horror stories about editors, titles, advances, and publishers who don't seem to care about their passion to write, but these authors who appeared at Project A-kon all say that they can't resist the drive to create new books. Pia and Elrod, Giles Portress, and Helen McCarthy agree that it's too expensive and risky to publish their own books, so they need to search for a publisher who is sympathetic to their projects. In Great Britain, the first novels typically sell only 500 copies, and publishers are reluctant to take on new talent because they see a chance of making money from them, said McCarthy. Books demand to be written, McCarthy said, citing her book on Hayao Miyazaki. You write because no one else will give you the books you want. Portress, who wrote the Anime Companion as his way of letting fans know about unexplained cultural references in anime, noted that Japanese do the same things we do for very different reasons. The book was carefully researched to make sure that there was a specific source for cultural notes, but not everything had a solid source. Most of these more nebulous items were turned into the book's sidebars, and Portress said they were the most fun part of the book to write. Take the cliche of sexual excitement causing men's noses to bleed. Portress said he could not nail the source of that until he got an email message from a Japanese man who said his mother told him not to stare at a pretty girl or his nose will bleed. This was enough for Portress, who inserted a similar sidebar in his book. Earlier, the site listened to anime fan fiction writers. When Elrod was asked if she had a suggestion for writers, she replied them with a story of her experience with a fan who sent her a fan face on Elrod's Jet Fleming vampire detective character. The fan may have thought she was paying a compliment to Elrod, but Elrod was angered, not liking any of the unauthorized use of her work. The author noted that fanfic writers have graduated to professional work, but they warned those aspiring authors that never should submit a fanfic to a publisher. They should avoid any tinge of plagiarism if they want to succeed. Antarctic Press held court for aspiring artists. Antarctic Press has worked to give young artists a chance to succeed in the business where few seem to get the chance. The American comics industry. On the last day of Project A-kon, Ben Dunn and Sean Howell got together to pass along tips for aspiring artists. They all collected samples of those artists' work, planning to critique them and give out awards to the best entrants. Dunn took a whiteboard to show the basics of figure art, telling the audience that they need to avoid static, emotionless designs. It's pretty boring, Dunn said about the poses that don't move. It's how we see things in real life, but it's not how we want to tell stories and make them exciting. Dunn went on to emphasize the dynamic poses don't require currently fashionable hyper-realistic style in American comics where superheroes look as if their manga uniforms were painted on. And he pointed to manga as an example. Manga artists don't emphasize the body because they aren't drawn realistically, he said. They are trying to tell a story with drama. Howell said he's still learning from other artists refining his style. Another 3 years down the road, I'll see another artist I like and pick up some tricks from him, he said. Howell noted that he has changed the way that he draws faces and revised the proportions of arms and body, along the way the limbs of his characters are attached to their torsos. Fred Perry, who has elevated the American manga style to new levels with his Gold Digger series, now finds himself in an unlikely position of editor. Gold Digger stories are now being drawn by other artists and published by Radio Comics, and Perry supervises the work of those artists to make sure they portray the characters he wants. Perry said he keeps track of the finished inked items from those artists and has had called for revisions to those pages. Ram says he's met Fred Perry, nice dude, and there was a warning about censorship aimed at all artists. Okay, this should be interesting. What were they talking about? All right, what is the topic of censorship in 2000? At CatsCon, the site encountered Chris Orr, executive director of the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, the man in charge of the group that fights censorship and complaints against the comics industry, and warned that in February that there had been a police crackdown against anime in Corpus Christi, Texas. At Project A-kon, Adam Richards of the fund said there was better news on the front. The harassment had stopped after a fund attorney had informed the police that their action was essentially a form of legal search and seizure. We were lucky to have a good attorney, said Richards. Sadly, the fund has encountered other censorship moves against comics specialty stores in Texas. Richards said, ironically, one of them has been prompted by a person who went to a store looking for Pokemon merchandise and spotted mature material he didn't like. To show how far objections against anime and manga can go, according to Richards, a man purchased a Dragon Ball comic at a Toys R Us store. He didn't like it, complained to the company, and the toy store chain pulled the comics from all of its stores. Even though the comic was marketed towards children, all it takes is someone to say it's obscene, he noted. However, not every move to water down comics will work. Richards pointed to a case from San Antonio of an artist whose strip was painted in an alternative newspaper. Some people saw it, complained, and tried to shut it down, the strip and the paper, but once the word got out, everyone snapped up their papers and increased the circulation. No one would drop it. Alright, a quick chat with a Dragon Ball voice actor. You won't hear the name of Carol Burnett mentioned in connection with anime dubbing, but the name was brought up when Tiffany Vollmer briefly chatted about her work as the latest English voice of Bulma in the Dragon Ball Z anime. Bulma is stranded by herself on a planet in the first episodes voiced by Vollmer, and there's as much screaming and moaning as dialogue in those episodes. Vollmer said her voice director told her she had to Carol Burnett it when she had made those noises in the style of the veteran actor. It was so easy, Vollmer said. Well, maybe not so easy on the throat because those screams are full of voice, and maybe not so easy when the dialogue arrives because there are subtle differences in writing styles from episode to episode. When Vollmer has trouble with a particular line of dialogue, sometimes they've need to go take a break and try again. A-kon was the first anime convention for most of the Dragon Ball Z cast, based in Funimation's home state of Texas, and Vollmer said, "It's so new to me, it's exciting at this point." She also found that there are a lot of convention fans who want to become voice actors. Get some acting training if you want to get this job, she suggested. It's time to head home and think about what Project A-kon all meant. You can hear the roar and whine of turbofan engines at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport from the author's hotel room. It's music to the ears of an aviation buff, but it's also a sign of Project A-kon's over and nearly time to get on one of those airliners and head home. Project A-kon proved that attraction of anime conventions is people, not just animated films or merchandise in the dealer's room. It was great to be able to meet the relatives of the friends this author has met. Jessica Alvel's parents, Lisa Ortiz's brother, Rachel Lillis' sister, Lionel Lum's sister, and Amy and Doc Fraga's baby girl. That baby, by the way, may have set a record for the youngest cosplayer of all time when her delighted parents dressed her in a Powerpuff Girl shirt. The people who complained about the length of the 1999 A-kon masquerade had nothing to say in 2000, limiting the entrance to 50 made for a fast show, and there were nearly more time taken up with a halftime show, an illusionist, a sword dojo demonstration, and a weird skit, as with the masquerade presentations. The best culture clash of the weekend could have been seen in the audience at Saturday Night Masquerade. There was Tiffany Grant, an actor from Texas, wearing the costume of Soryu Asuka Langley, half Japanese, half American girl from Germany, sitting next to Japanese artist Takada Akemi, who was wearing a cowboy hat after spending part of the convention weekend on horseback. The oddest sight of the weekend was the group of the black robe acolytes who paraded through the halls on Friday night with a large green Cthulhu. One can imagine the kind of person who might have stumbled upon this and took it seriously. A-kon followed the pattern set 3 weeks earlier by Anime Central. There was so much going on that it was impossible to attend all the interesting events, even though the author tried. Sadly, several scheduled events never took place, and since a business used some of the convention area rooms next to A-kon's territory, some events were on the upper floors, 4 floors above the convention halls. The weekend promised to be hot, but it was wet. This part of Texas was washed clean by rain that started on Saturday evening and didn't let up until Sunday afternoon. It could have been far worse. Counties north of the convention were drenched, and flash floods were feared in a wide area. For some fans, Project A-kon will be remembered for the elevators. The Hyatt Hotel where the convention was staged has 6 elevator cars for a 12-story building, but the crowds overwhelmed the system all weekend. There appeared to be a bug in the control room system. Often a car would get to a floor and refuse to move several minutes. And the only real intense fan unhappiness seen by this author during the weekend was during the intermingle day, as long as 1 hour to get to the hall for the celebrity banquet. For the second year in a row, there's confusion over how to seat people, and fans had to stew in line until the problem was cleared up. Note that while the author had a banquet ticket, the delay worked in his favor since it allowed him to attend parts of 2 other panels held at the same time and still get into the hall for lunch. Great chicken, by the way. The author would be remiss without mentioning the names of 2 anime fans who passed away in the last year. There is Noemi Dominguez, the Houston school teacher who was murdered just before the 1999 convention. The man who admitted killing her faces as a death sentence from another murder. And there is Roger O'Connor, the co-founder of Anime Radio online program, who was killed in a car crash 3 weeks before the convention. The driver who caused the crash has not been found at this writing. Both people love the anime convention scene. Their deaths bring into sharper focus the love, joy, and celebration that conventions offer, and make the weekend's flaws seem much smaller by comparison. On an additional note of sadness, Larry Newber, an old racing friend of the author, died a few days after the convention. And with that said, that wraps it up for A-kon 2000. And before we go forth, I wanted to just give a shout out to my book, The Fangirl Diaries. The Fangirl Diaries is all about this era of anime fandom. We talk about the transition of anime becoming a niche subculture and to its early days as mainstream entertainment, how we went from VHS fan subs tape trading online to being a huge success on Toonami and Adult Swim. And with that said, feel free to pick up a copy of my book. If I am at a convention that you're at, I am more than happy to sign a copy of your book. And with that said, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in my virtual cottage as we go through the history of anime fandom. Our mission for Fansview Fridays is we do not want this piece of fandom history to be lost. So this is our best way to preserve that history that Kevin Lillard has shared with us throughout the years. And with that said, thank you so much for your time, and we will see you again next week, Friday, 6 p.m. at the Wisteria Cottage.
Raiders! What is happening? Wisteria! Rain, hello! Welcome! What is happening? This is the second raid today. I've never... Hi! Hello! Mr. Ramses, YouTube, hello! Wisteria Witch, YouTube, hello! Zod, Wizaden, let's go! Hello! This never happened before! I never thought raids would happen! Wow! Oh, you have a little emote! Oh, that's adorable! I love that! Hello, how was stream? Welcome, we're playing Celeste. Raiders, hi, hello, greetings, salutations. This is weird with raids happening. Yeah. Hello, my name is Ari. Zari, I'm the mascot of Akon, which is an anime convention. You can check the socials and the about me. We have a Discord, we have an Instagram, if you're curious about what that is. I also feel important to mention that I'm planning to graduate from VTubing tomorrow. So I really appreciate the raid, but yeah, I do hope you enjoy your time for what little there might be left. Thank you for coming around. Enjoy me suffering. Graduation, yeah! I got a bit more time left, sorry, but like, we vibing, we doing this. Ah. It's like a raid today, this has never happened before. I set up those alerts, but I never thought they'd actually get used. I am a senior citizen now. Yeah. Huh. I hope your stream was good. Welcome. If you need to, if you're gonna lurk, feel free to lurk. If you wanna chat, feel free to chat. No pressure or anything. Yeah. We're doing this now. What am I doing? We're playing Japanese, by the way, because I want to learn language a bit more. What are you asking me to, game? Hello. Oh, that's interesting. Well, yeah, good to hear it. Okay, even higher with that one, huh? Maybe centered roughly. Oh, yeah, strawberry! I'm not gonna worry about those right now. I'm too stressed by this timer. I missed my dash. Why must you do this to me, Madeline? I missed my dash.